Welcome to this edition of the Million Dollar Mastermind podcast. This is where we pick the brains of high achievers from all walks of life and get their hard-earned, real-world insights on winning. I'm your host, Larry Weidel.
It got so bad you had to let staff go. You had to sell your car. You probably were a little bit behind on some of the bills.
Absolutely. I was owing money to people. I couldn't pay them. And it was very sweet. Most of the people, and, even the small people, right. Window cleaner, they were all actually very supportive of me. And, I remember I owed somebody some money, and I just started off one of the great passions of my life, which was wine collecting. And that's defined for many years, my wine collection. And he was happy to take a couple of cases of wine in lieu of the bill. But then, it's a matter.
How did you pull out of that thing? What I would think about in that you've talked about, even when you went to London, everything has to be first class. You have to you're building credibility. They don't want to see that you're jittery. When someone's going to pay you a big dollar for a painting, they want confidence. And when you're on shaky ground, or you're sinking in the mud, it's kind of hard to have that happy, confident.
I had at that moment a potential deal to an American museum, which was going to earn £50,000, which was going to, be transformational. Obviously, I made sure the museum didn't know of my predicament, and the deal went through. Selling to a museum takes time, and actually, I'm going to tell you something else, another story. At this moment, I'm still having broken off my relationship with Gabby Harvey-Jones, or said I'm not going to go through the wedding. We then got back together again, and actually the relationship then became even more intense and very special. And so, my relationship with the father improved as well. So at the moment where the bank basically had called in outside auditors, I'd had an appointment I had to present a survival plan to the bank. And Gabby had said, well, look, you should discuss this with Sir John, who was in his suite at the local Park Lane Hotel. And I remember going to see him, showed him the papers. As I say, I had said earlier, Sir John really didn't understand the art market. And he looked through it and said, look, Mark, really, there's no disgrace in going bankrupt. I walked out, got into bed, cried my eyes out, pulled the covers sheet over myself, and I just wanted to crawl under a hole and die. Anyway, the following morning, when I had a 10 o'clock meeting at the bank, and I'm sitting at the desk on my own in my little gallery, and the phone goes, and it was another art dealer friend of mine who trained as an accountant, funny enough. And he said, Mark, what's this I hear about you being in trouble? And I explained what was happening. He said, well, stay where you are. Don't move. I'll be round in 20 minutes. So he got in a taxi. He was out in Westbourne Grove, West London, and rocked in the gallery. He said, right, where's the bits of paper? And he had a quick look through it. This is ridiculous. Right, what you're going to do is you're going to take me to the meeting with the manager. Don't you say a word. You let me do all the talking. You introduce me as your business associate. And by the way, it had just had a new manager, a brand new manager, so who knew nothing about my business. And it was easier for him. He didn't really want to have to deal with a business that was in trouble. It was easier for him just to get rid of it. So anyway, so this guy was called Eddie Crawshaw. And anyway, so Eddie and I rock into the manager, and Eddie starts talking. And he says, look, Mark's going to stop drawing a salary. He's going to sell his car. He's going to do this, that, and the other. And, we've got these deals on the table. What's your problem? And the manager says, yeah, no, you're right. Absolutely. Look, if he can pull this through, then yeah, absolutely. We haven't got a problem. So we rocked out of there. And obviously I still had to, do the business, and we made the sale to the museum. And also with this impetus, I worked really hard. And then within a matter of a year or so, I did a run of major sales, including a Van Dyke to the Seattle Art Museum, which made another £500,000. Saw another pitch, I made another 200,000 here. And, I was right back up at the top of the tree again.
You hear so often, Mark, in talking with people, that after they go through the disaster where they're crying their eyes out at night, that type thing, the next year, they're the greatest year of their life. It's just unbelievable. It's almost like a test, that life puts you through a test. And I remember in our company, the founder said one time in a manager meeting, he said, your breakthrough is going to come the second time you seriously want to commit suicide and don't.
I actually had one of those moments a few years later where again, I was still in Albemarle Street. Right. I owed money left, right, and center. And I just couldn't see how I was going to get out of the hole. This dark thought crossed my mind, right, and it disappeared in a heartbeat. But I think that's the other big lesson that I've learned, that having run the business, I'd say on a shoestring, but always rattling around, the top end of your borrowings and always being stressed, was to just make sure going forward, if you can, always keep a bit of fat to one side. Just make sure, don't put all the chips on the line all the time.
There's a lot to that, Mark. Don't put all the chips on, because if you're an entrepreneur, you're a business owner, you're a gunslinger, basically. You call a shot, you bet the farm, you do this, but you don't have to bet all of the farm.
I've just been doing that. Actually, I just bought a fantastic painting for a lot of money that I
did you? Yeah, you probably have a pretty good idea of where that can go now, as far as placing it and turning it over a lot quicker than you did early on. It's just like, if you're going to bet the farm, have a place where you know what you're going to do with the farm. When you get it, you can turn that thing over. Did you have those kind of things where you learned a lesson for yourself and affected you going forward?
I would like to say yes, but then again, I think probably spoke to my wife as well, and my family all know and love me. I've changed, and I like to think I've matured a lot, and I'm far more sensible than so many others in many respects. I'm far more patient than I used to be, I would argue, though others would dispute that. Ultimately, you are what you are. You are the creature you are. You can, obviously you try to accommodate the faults and try to protect yourself from making the mistakes. That doesn't mean to say that given the certain circumstances, you just revert to type. And I've always been a gambler. I've always been somebody, and I've said this to other people, that that in order to achieve success, you often have to reach for that branch that other people wouldn't reach. It's a risk. Do I make that leap? Leaping into the void to grab that branch, which is going to take you even higher. And not many people have got the balls to do it.
When you found you've done that in the past, did you follow that up with a burst of work or something like, I've be real right now, I've got to be real serious? I'm just wondering if this affects the attention to detail and the perfectionist type things, because a lot of times owners become perfectionists because they've gone through, things happen in cycles. They have same things happen over. And so when things go wrong, you learn, this can go wrong if I don't make sure this is, if I leave the door cracked, the wind will blow the door open, so I don't want to leave the thing cracked. And just little simple things, but the longer you're in there, there's more little things, attention to detail. And what you're really trying to do is save yourself from bigger disasters. You're not trying to be OCD. It's not a psychotic type thing. You're just trying to save yourself from bigger problems, ounce of prevention type thing. Don't, clean that, change that, fix that before. That's just a lot of that you accumulate just from being in business, don't you?
I think the other thing that I have now is, which I didn't have, say, 20 years ago, I've got a much stronger support group around me. And I've learned to take advice or rather I have people giving me good advice. So whether it's my wife, my sister, who works very closely with us, she's always been there. But as I mentioned, I've got a great young team, a young man called Charlie Mackay and Flora Crichton-Stewart, who's sort of gallery manager, and Charlie's really co-director in the gallery. Great researcher, very hard workers, very imaginative. I do listen to them. And occasionally they'll say to me, Mark, well, actually, I'm not sure that's a great idea, or, maybe we should do acting this way or do that. And I listen now. Having a good team to help and support you is vital.
Even Sotheby's and Christie's almost went bankrupt, both of them, I think. Haven't they, over the last 10 years or 20 years?
Oh, yes, it hasn't been a bed of roses for them. And, I have very good, very close relationships with the directors, the old master partners in both companies. And, I count them as my friends, though, we're obviously on the other side of the fence.
Right.
And in truth, the auction houses, have caused a lot of problems for art galleries and art dealers, because they're taking, or have attempted to take away. When I first started art dealing with my parents, auctions were primarily for the trade.
Right.
Now they're primarily for the private clients. We're trying to service. So they've been taking away our market. And in fact, I can think of several big buyers now who, and I would say stupidly, have will only, for whatever reason, they feel comfortable buying at auction because there's competition for the picture. Whereas, if you have it hanging on the wall, they immediately think it should be cheaper than it is.
Yeah. It's just the psychology of it.
In fact, I had this joke, which I used to say was, you get a client looking at a painting and he says, well, how much is it? And you go, well, it's 100,000. And they wait a few minutes and they say, sorry, just tell me 100. No, it's 110,000.
Yeah.
And they go, no, now, and it's 115,000. Hold on a minute, Mr. Weiss. Well, that's what happens in an auction,
Yeah, right. Yeah. And so, what part of the year is the most fun for you now in the art world? I mean, is there certain fairs, certain events?
Yeah, well, I would say this period from October through till Christmas is a very busy time of year for us. January, February become a hit and miss, but then we're building up for exhibiting at the world's greatest art fair, TAFAF in Maastricht, the European Fine Art Fair.
Where's Maastricht? Where is that? Holland?
Yeah, Maastricht. Yeah, it's been going now for over 35 years, and it is the world's greatest art fair, head and shoulders above anything else. I mean, it's extraordinary, absolutely extraordinary.
Now, is that on old masters versus contemporary? Everything.
Masters, contemporary. You get antiques, jewelry, sculpture, carpets, you name it. It's there.
And that's in March, April.
Billions of dollars worth of art.
And you show there. You have
I've been showing there, regularly. Yeah.
Very, very interesting. Well, I appreciate you taking the time. It's interesting to get, you go in the galleries. There's one thing about a gallery. It's so intimidating in a lot of galleries because, you walk in and you just don't feel comfortable. In fact, I had a lady who was on the board of directors of Eastman Kodak. She's one of 4 organizers of the London Photographic Fair. She's written 6 books on photography. If anybody should feel confident walking into any gallery in the world, it's her. And she says, I'm scared to death to go in a gallery. I'm totally intimidated. The way they, like a French maitre d' looking at you or something like, who let you in here? And so it can be intimidating, to go in.
Well, that's something that I feel is very important. And it's something that actually I always make sure that I encourage, whoever's working in the gallery. Yeah. I've always said, I try to keep the door open, and whoever walks in the door, doesn't matter who they are, you treat everybody the same and friendly. I mean, we had a couple of young kids in the gallery the other day. Now, you never know, You don't know who
know.
the father is. You don't know they could be the next super thing, TikTok or whatever, and in a couple of years become billionaires.
Exactly.
Remember, you know, that nice guy who was so kind to us in the gallery. Let's go back and see him.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for taking the time. And I know the time difference and everything is makes it a little more awkward at the end of the day rather than the middle of the day.
Glass of wine.
The glass of wine makes it tolerable. So thanks for sharing. And I always let our guests have the final word and things they would like to pass on to people who are listening and looking for ideas for incorporating back in their business and moving forward. What would you have something you'd want to pass on?
If you honestly in your heart believe in something, have the confidence to stick with your beliefs. Taken many paths, whether it's in a painting or whatever, where all the world is uncle has thought one thing and I've thought another thing. Now, if you genuinely believe in something and that belief is based on your own skill sets, have the confidence to stick with it.
Absolutely. Great advice. And you certainly followed it. You're a perfect example of following that your entire career. I'm going to look forward to seeing you when I come to London, and I'll definitely know where to find you. Thanks so much, Mark. Goodbye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Million Dollar Mastermind. If you felt there were any valuable takeaways from this episode, please take a minute and leave us a 5-star review. Your feedback is important and really helps us get the word out to a wider audience. Remember, we have a valuable webinar that is absolutely free. Register for it right now at weidelonwinning.com. Thanks for listening.